Okay, welcome back. We're on page 381. We're talking about the manufacturing use of this e-commerce, m-commerce kind of thing. And they give it a thing talking about mobile exchange, or manufacturing exchanges rather. So here's sort of a manufacturing exchange. And this is sort of like that business to business kind of thing we talked about. But remember, B2B required you to set up a contract, and you told them your estimated volume that you were going to be buying, and the minimum order size is 100. Lots and lots of contractual kind of relationships. This is essentially like a poor man's business to business. So an exchange is really designed for business to business, but it's kind of free form. Anyone can just kind of pop in, join. Typically, it doesn't cost you anything to join the exchange, and so you buy and sell products. Now, I have had some experience with this dealing with recyclable materials. So let's say, for example, that your manufacturing process produces a lot of aluminum scrap. And so what you want to do is you want to be able to make your aluminum available for other people to buy, your scrap aluminum for other people to buy. So an electronic exchange is perfect for that, because this week you may have half a ton of aluminum, but next week you may have 6 tons of aluminum. So your production of aluminum scrap waste is not constant, and so you don't really have a formal arrangement with a buyer. What you essentially want is like an eBay kind of a thing for commodities. Okay, or it's like almost like going to eBay saying, I've got 6.5 tons of aluminum and what's my minimum bid. It's just like that, except it's the only people who go to that website are other people interested in buying scrap metal. Okay, so that's what that's all about. Okay, there are private and public versions of this. You can kind of lock it down. Maybe there's an industry consortium of scrap metal buyers, so you have to be a member of this consortium to be able to play, or they can be completely open, and so anybody can come in and do their thing. All right. For example, Walmart has an electronic exchange. Okay, they have a private electronic exchange designed so vendors can go and say, look, I want to have my stuff show up in your store. And so they have these arrangements, and they have a fantastic electronic exchange just for Walmart. And as it says here in the book, several people have come in and say, please, can I get into your exchange and participate? And they say, no, this is ours. Private exchange only. Okay, cool. The next category to talk about is marketing. And so marketing almost has some bad connotations, because the first thing that pops in my mind is goofy, targeted advertisements. And this is, so they call it market segmentation. Yeah, okay, that's a good term. But, I told you the story about a couple of videos ago where, I have a great aunt has problems with hemorrhoids. And so I spent, 10 minutes Googling hemorrhoid medicines and hemorrhoid cures and natural kind of things you could do without, non-medical treatment of hemorrhoids. And then for weeks after that, I got pop-up ads for hemorrhoids. I'm thinking, geez, what a pain in the ass, because it's a hemorrhoid. Okay. So, yes, marketing. Now, on the other side of that, not from the consumer side, but from a business side, marketing clearly is important, right? I mean, you hire people to come in and do marketing for you. So, yes, you need to have some way of contacting your potential customers. All right, the next one they talk about is advertising, and these are those little pop-up ads. And so, unfortunately, look, advertising is just a fact of life. I mean, people have good websites out there, but it takes money to pay the web host provider. Those are not free, right? So let's say I have a web page, it costs me money, and then I have to go there every couple of days and clean things up or answer questions, or maybe I even have to hire somebody to help run my forum or question and answer section. Again, it costs money. And I'm not making any money off the website necessarily, because it's just a free site for people can go to find out how to fix lawnmowers or something. So I need advertisers in order to get money to be able to support this. Without advertisement, I would have to shut down my website. Okay, so fact of life. There are different kinds of ways you can get advertisements. The one is called the cost per thousand. The other one is cost per click. In other words, if I click on an ad, that cost goes up. And then cost per action, which means I clicked on an ad and then actually bought something. So first one is I'm blasted with a bunch of advertisement. That's very, very low cost. Advertising came up and I clicked on it. Ooh. Okay, now that the advertiser can charge a little more. If I clicked on it and then did something, like I bought something or at least filled out a shopping cart, like I was getting ready to buy something, or some sort of an action, so that means even more. Okay, so those are the three kind of categories: the pay per click, cost per click, and cost per action. Now there are three. So those are the what they call impressions. In other words, the actual thing that you're doing. Now there are three different types of these. All right, blind, which means I'm an advertiser now, or I'm a vendor and I want advertisement. Blind means I go to a company and they just put stuff out. I don't really tell them to put it on the AARP website or any of those things. I'm not trying to target any one person, so it's just blind. And typically the kind of pricing would be that cost per click, which is dirt cheap. Premium blind, which means I hit everyone and I can give them a list of websites that I'm kind of sort of thinking that most of my customers are going to go to. So most of it is blind, but there's an additional charge for specific spot. And typically that's one of those cost per click kind of thing. And then the real premium is I give them a list of locations to say I only want you to advertise exactly on there, and that's why those cost per click things go up. So from 1 cent to $20 per thousand, and $40 per thousand. I wish the units of measure here were a little bit easier to read. But anyway, the idea is that blast it, targeted, and then targeted. Okay. The next thing they talk about is bartering websites, and this is kind of sort of simple. You know what we're talking about. We're talking about like Craigslist, that kind of stuff, where I've got something, and you put it out. I'm not using my bass boat anymore, but I'm interested in buying a television. So you go to Craigslist and say, bass boat for sale, we'll trade for TV, that kind of stuff. So it's not really money involved, although could be. So bartering websites. There's an interesting term here called retargeting. I really like this term, hint, 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 like maybe it might show up in a future test question. So retargeting is really, really about, I'm looking at trying to find out why you did not buy my product. Okay, now let me explain how this works. So, let's say I went and looked at coffee makers, and so I clicked on this coffee maker and I read everything there was to read. And then I went to another one and read everything there is to read. I went to a third one and read everything and then I bought the third one. Okay? A very, very rich source of information would be, why did I not buy the first and the second one? Okay, the fact that I did buy the third one, okay. If you're that vendor who makes the third one, woohoo! But if you're vendor number one or vendor number two, wouldn't you want to know why that somebody thought about buying your product and then bought a competitor's product? That's some powerful information. So retargeting is trying to find out, I went there and I abandoned my shopping cart and I want to know why. Very powerful amount of information here. Very powerful. In fact, one of the things that Amazon does extremely well is provides this kind of information on, I looked at 3 things and then bought the third one. And they can provide that kind of feedback to the other companies. And the other companies can look at it and say, well, the reason why I bought third one, because my price point is way too high. That's dang good information I need to know. So retargeting, I think it's important, and I pretty much will guarantee it's going to be on the quiz. Price comparison, you know what we're talking about. I do this all the time. Online mobile version is, you go to a grocery store and you whip out your phone and you pop the UPC code, and it'll look up all the retailers in your area, all the grocery stores in your area, and tell you where to buy the cheapest Cheerios. So yeah, particularly with the mobile part, this is big business, price comparison. Couponing, kind of the same scenario. I could go into a grocery store and pop a UPC code. It'll tell me whether there's an online coupon. It'll actually show a QR code or a barcode on the phone itself that the person at the checkout stand can scan. So you don't actually physically have to have the coupon. Of course, you could anticipate that at home and print them out, but that's not necessarily what this is about. Okay. The next thing to talk about is the use in finance. And so you guys know what we're talking about here. The traditional stock trading kind of thing. You've probably heard of a thing called a day trader. Day trader is a person who basically what they do for a living is log on to these stock websites and buy and sell stocks, in their own little portfolio. And if they work it, then they can make, a couple $100 a day just sitting around playing on the internet. So that's what E-Trade is all about. TD Ameritrade, those kind of things. These people who just, get, discounts on commissions and direct access to the stock market. Anyway, program trades is a big business now. All right, let's continue. Traditional banking. So yes, a lot of people, check their bank balances, those kind of things. I recently bought something and I had a fraud alert pop up on my phone, potential fraud alert. And they said, "Did you make this charge?" And I went, "Yes." Dunk. I thought that was pretty doggone cool, that I get an instantaneous check to see whether or not, I actually made that purchase or not. Ooh, I like it. Okay. So, in addition to this, then you now have the mobile pay kind of things. We talk about the near field communication. We were talking about the networking section. Apple Pay and Google Pay, where you can basically use your phone as your debit card, which we'll talk about here in just a second anyway. Okay, so that's banking. The next talks about these e-boutiques, and this is specialized shopping. Basically, like I would hire. Now, clearly, nobody I know kind of fits into this category, so just bear with me. But I would basically hire like a personal shopper. Somebody would go out and buy my clothes for me or whatever it is I'm trying to buy. And so these specialized websites for specialized people. They talk about luxury gift as an quintessential gifts, but it talks about unusual and luxury gift kind of items. And yeah, okay, I don't ever go there. But anyway, so yeah, specialized clientele. We'll leave it at that. The next one talks about the strategies you would use for successful e-commerce. This is kind of important and a fertile ground for a lot more test questions too. The first thing to talk about is the model. What is the model for putting together a website? Okay. And one of the things they talk about is your website should not just be, well, here's my stuff that's for sale. That's it. Nothing more. You probably need more to it than that. Something like in this particular example, they talk about some sort of content like industry news or whatever it is that's going on, what's happening with the company or what's going on, and then some sort of community like a message board or chat room or a support forum, those kinds of things. So it's not just buying and selling products. You want people to feel at home. You want the people returning to your website. So a successful e-commerce website basically has these three components at least. They don't stick directly at, here, buy and sell my product. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.